Hello and welcome to this webinar from Comprion about NFC captures. I'm happy to have you here, and I'm very pleased that I'm together here with Andreas Weine, Head of Support. We sit together in the office. We are freshly tested, so this is all fine. Then we have online two other colleagues, Andreas Schreckenberg, Product Manager for Contactless Test Solutions. Thank you that you could make it today, Andreas.
Hello, thank you for the invitation, Swantje.
Yeah, this is really great to present this together. And then we have another colleague, Michael Schurwan, Senior Developer, and I can say he is Mr. Analog Scope, an expert for us. Hello, Michael. Thanks for joining and making.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's start with the webinar. We are sitting here in Paderborn in the headquarters, and we are broadcasting here from this nice office. It's a very great building, and it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Today we have the parts. I give a very small introduction to make you familiar with the GoToWebinar GUI so that you can make the most of it, ask questions, download the handouts, etc. And then we have two parts of the presentation. We look into the analysis of protocol data, and then we look in another part into the analysis of analog data. We have pre-recorded a video for that. This helps us to be available all the time for you for your questions. This puts me to the next point. If you have a very small view on the GUI or on the functionality of the GoToWebinar surface, then please click the orange arrow. This will enlarge the dialog. That way you can access, for instance, the handout and also the questions pane. Here in the handout part, you can download files, and here in the questions pane, you can type in a question and then send it to us. The questions you type and send are private, so we get this. It's not public, and when we answer you during the webinar, this is also private to you. At the end of the webinar, I try to give a summary of what we have seen, and then we do a Q&A session where we try to highlight the most important and very generic questions which we deem very interesting for you. So please stay tuned. We try to summarize and give another view into this and answer the maximum of questions we get. What we cannot answer, we will send after the webinar to you. So check your emails, happy to provide this to you. Here, and then I'd like to highlight also the download, the handouts section. There is the webinar slides with the summary of features and benefits at the end, and you have a small handout for how to configure the TraceCase app. We take the TraceCase as example today, and then we also have the app manual. There is a section in how to download files to the PC, which is also a question. Okay, then we are ready to go, and we move on now to the first part of the presentation with the video. I just remind you to don't be shy, ask questions in the questions pane. We're happy to answer it as soon as possible. So now.
Hello, welcome to our webinar. My name is Andreas Weine from the Comprion Customer Support, and I would like to show you today the TraceCase viewer in combination with the analog scope view. Before, we have created a log file by using the TraceCase, and we have saved the log file to my PC. And now I want to open the log file in the TraceCase viewer. You can see here different layers. We have first of all the physical layer, then we have the NFC application layer, we have the info view, and we have the summary view. First of all, I want to explain the physical layer. So in the physical layer view, we can of course see the complete communication. And we have here the channels. The I/O state, for example, shows the hex coding. The carrier channel shows the status of the carrier, carrier on, carrier modulated, and we have the subcarrier channel, which shows, for example, here, the subcarrier modulation. And we have the field strength, which is indicating the field strength. The user can use two cursors, two measurement cursors, cursor 1 and cursor 2. To set up these cursors, you have to click on the left mouse for the cursor 1 and on the right mouse button for cursor 2. You can see here the position of cursor 1 and cursor 2, the timing, and the distance between cursor 1 and cursor 2 also in this example in microseconds. To change, for example, the time, you can go here to the properties of the scope view, and you can, for example, also change the color if you want, and you can change the time extension. For example, by default, here we have microseconds. You can change this time into nanoseconds or, for example, milliseconds. It is possible to set up a node mark. So with the right mouse button, set node mark. Then here I can set up a node mark. For example, subcarrier modulation. I can create this node mark. I can shift the node mark to the correct position. And then I can lock this node mark. And I can set up different or several node marks in the physical layer view. And if you want to go, for example, back to this specific node mark, here we have the possibility to jump to this node mark, for example, jump to previous node mark, and then automatically the software is jumping to this node mark. And once again, you can set up different node marks here, and probably in case you have a specific position here in the communication, then you can set up a node mark and jump to this node mark. Furthermore, we have here the time slider control. You can see here a time slider, and you can go through the whole communication by using this time slider. So here we can see the protocol layer view. In the protocol layer view, you can see the communication direction as well. Here you can see, for example, polar listener. You can see here the description, for example, all request, sense request, and of course also here the meaning. Furthermore, we have here an indication of the timing of each command, and it is possible to use a different view of the protocol layer view. So we have here the command level, we have the protocol level, and the byte level. Let's go to the protocol level. Here you can see the value in more details, and also, of course, the communication direction. And in the byte level view, you can see all the bytes, the complete description, and of course also here the direction. And here a detailed meaning of each byte, as far as we can translate it. In the protocol view, you can also add a node mark. And of course you can, if you want, also copy, paste a specific area of the protocol view and paste this into a, for example, text file. Let's go to the application layer view. Here we have the application layer view. So we have here the, for example, capability information of the tag we used here. So we used here a tag for the complete trace session. And we have the NDF message. And here you can see that the NDF message is translated. Here we can see the text record, and we used here a text, for example, thanks for joining our webinar, which will be of course also translated here. You can see also the capability information of this type 2 tag. Here the information, okay, here we used type 2 tag. For example, the manufacturer, if there is any manufacturer, and also the product code, serial number of the tag, the version, and read access condition and write access condition. Also in the application layer view, it is possible to add a note mark. Also here it is possible to copy, let's say, specific area in the application layer view and to paste this to a document. Let's go then to the summary view. And here the summary view shows you the complete communication flow. For example, first of all, we have here 2 resets, then we have the ATR request. We have here again a reset, and here we have, for example, a response. You can see that each window, every window, is synchronized. So the summary view is synchronized with the physical layer view, with the protocol layer view, and also in case I go here, I select a specific command in the protocol layer view. This is also synchronized with the physical layer view and the summary view. You can use the summary view also for timing measurements. For example, if you want to, let's say, go to a specific command, for example, here we have read commands, and I want to measure the time, the distance, the time between these 2 read commands. Just double click on this read command. Here we have the timing of the read command. And if I double click on the next read command, I have also the timing of the next read command and the distance between the first read command and the second read command. So a very nice feature for timing measurements. But of course, you can also use the physical layer view with cursor 1 and cursor 2 for the timing measurements or for detailed timing measurements. For example, timing of the response time of the PICC. At the bottom, we have the so-called information view. The information view shows, for example, the start of the complete session. And then we have here also different information. For example, here you can see the information analog scope detected. I will come to this later. So here we have the synchronization with the analog scope. At this point, we have triggered our analog scope with a specific trigger condition. In this case, the trigger condition was PICC active. I will show it later in the analog scope log. And we have here also warnings. And of course, in case we have indicated an error, you can see here also the error messages. And also here the information view is synchronized with the physical view, with the protocol view, and the application view. Of course, you can filter the information view. You can maybe enable or disable the information, the warnings, the errors, or further messages. It is possible to, let's say, activate, deactivate, of course, the physical layer, the protocol layer, the application layer, or the summary view by using these top buttons. So here I can, for example, enable, disable the summary view if I want, or enable, disable the physical layer view. And it is possible to use a so-called search function, which is very powerful. So I can click here on the search button, and then we can, for example, create my own search condition. So here we have, for example, of course, the NFC communication, and the search condition is here, for example, byte pattern. I can enter a specific byte pattern. For example, let's have a look. 00 F025. I can add this, and now I can search this byte pattern within the communication. Click on search, and here now we have this position where we have here located our byte pattern, which I previously used here in my search condition. So 00F025. And we have here also the indication not only in the protocol view, but also in the application view regarding the search condition. And we have it here also in the summary view. You can see here the ATR request is also, let's say, indicated by a yellow color, and also here in the protocol layer it's indicated by a yellow color. So here we can find our byte pattern, and it is possible to toggle the filter, and then I can only see this specific part of the communication, the specific ATR request here in my protocol view. That's also possible. So it is possible, for example, for the customer to use, let's say, also a repository. Here this repository is empty, so I can, for example, save this specific search condition, and then it is part of my repository. So I can say byte pattern, click on OK, and then this search condition is part of my repository, and I can add different search conditions which I can use later on in the trace case viewer. So you can create several search conditions, and they are now then part of the repository. It is also possible to save the complete communication, not only, let's say, in the so-called TRS log, but if you want, and if you share this logs with a colleague who does not have probably the trace case viewer, then you can, of course, export this information into, let's say, a PDF file. Here you can choose which kind of content you want to export. For example, I just want to save everything here, and then I can export this to a PDF file. That's also possible. And now I would like to switch to the analog scope log of this trace. So I want to open the analog scope log. As I mentioned before, we can see here in the information view an information that the analog scope trigger was detected. That's our position in the complete communication, where the trigger was set for, let's say, tracing the analog scope data. And now I want to open the analog scope. I can see here a button, Open Analog Scope Result. I click on this.
So this is the end of the first part. Okay, so we are going to have a very small poll today, 2 questions for you, and you would be very helpful to answer it. The first question is about translation. You have seen in the application layer, we have shown you a translation, tag content, and we would like to know from you what you deem important, which type of translations you would see in the market or for your application, for your job as important and as a priority. So happy to get your answers. I have launched the poll, and you can click on those which match. So I give you the time to look into that. It's very interesting. We get the first answers in here. There are some, so we have done 2 webinars yesterday and the day before. So there is a small trend, which I can tell you in a minute, but I'm still waiting a bit for your votes. So still my minority of participants who has answered. Therefore, I'd like you to take a second to look into this and to give us a hint. Okay. I think I'm going to close the poll in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and then close the poll, which gives me the chance to share the results with you. Okay, so what we can see here, there's a very clear trend, and that is similar to the other webinars. We have the prevalence of Apple translation, and there's also important need for payment translations. And then this is followed by connection handover and Cypress Calypso. This is a bit different to the other webinars. Very interesting to see where, how the answers split. Thank you very much for answering this. And then there's a very small second question. So I close this one and I launch the other question. This is about applications you deem to be important in the market. So we have some choices of order of priority. Orientate yourself maybe at the first one. And yeah, I'd be happy if you share your view about what you think is important for contactless and NFC applications in the market. Okay, this is the first hit is like yesterday, and in contrast to the first day, so very interesting. Thank you for sharing your view. This is really your personal view. We would like to know about what you think is very important. Here we have some orders. Take the one which suits your view as best, please. Okay, then majority made the decision. I'm going to wait a bit. Encourage you to give the last vote here. So gut feeling is also nice. If you say, I don't know, but this is my feeling, that's also nice. Okay, then I think majority has set their votes, and I'm going to close this in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So this gives me the chance to share the result with you. And this is a very clear trend towards mobility as the most important application, and then also asset tracking inventory, also important. Thank you for sharing your view on this. This helps us also to focus on these applications and to take this into consideration into our activities. So this is time now. I'm hiding the results now. This is time now to launch, to go into the second part of the presentation with the analog data analysis. And again, I share the video. After that, we will have the summary and the Q&A. So this is launching now.
Here we can see the analog scope. And first of all, I click on Auto to see the complete analog scope data. And here we have the complete analog scope data. And you can see here, first of all, which is important, the trigger condition. The trigger condition for this analog scope is PICC active. And this trigger condition has been set before in the trace case app. Before tracing this log, before tracing this communication, this trigger condition has been set in the trace case app. And for our example, we used here PICC active. And this is the same position which you can see here in the trace case viewer. That's our position here also in the analog scope. Of course, we have here a channel which is called envelope. So here you can see the envelope, and you can see here the analog channel configuration. And by using this analog channel configuration, you can of course use these small wheels to change, let's say, the position of the envelope, or to change the resolution, and also here the position. We have here different channels, digital channels. You can see here the carrier on indication. You can see here the carrier modulation. Let's go zoom in a little bit so I can zoom also here the signal, the channel. So with the left mouse button, then I can zoom here this position, and here we can see our channels. These are the digital channels, the carrier modulated channel, the subcarrier on, the subcarrier phase, the envelope, PCD active, PICC active, the high-speed transfer, and the T=CL protocol indication. But first of all, let's go to our envelope. Here we can see, for example, a subcarrier phase, and we can zoom this subcarrier phase by using my mouse, and I can also use my control button and the mouse wheel to zoom in or to zoom out. That's also possible. Let's go back to the complete communication. We have here also implemented a so-called time slider control. You can see this time slider control here. So we can slide through the whole communication. And now let's go to the trigger itself. We have here the trigger position. I can zoom in. First of all, here we have a carrier modulation, and here we have the subcarrier modulation, the PICC response in this case. And it is possible, first of all, let's go to this carrier modulation, and I want to measure this specific carrier modulation. First of all, I have the possibility to set up also here margin cursors, so cursor 1 and cursor 2. This is, let's say, the same view like in the physical layer view of the trace case viewer. So we have the position here in milliseconds of cursor 1 and cursor 2 and the distance, and here also in elementary time units. It is possible also here, let's say, to go to the properties, and here we have the same, let's say, property view like before in the physical layer view of the trace case viewer. Here we can also change the timing and so on. So it's the same look and feel like in the trace case viewer. Also lock these margin cursors, for example, the distance here, and then we can go here. So we have every time the same distance between cursor 1 and cursor 2. Maybe for comparison, for measurement comparison, you can use this feature. Then let's go to the measurement cursors. So here you can set up different measurement cursors. Measurement cursors X and measurement cursors Y and X and Y. So here we can set up, let's say, measurement cursors. We can say snap, and then these cursors will snap on the envelope line. And here in the cursor result view, you can see here then the timing, so the X value in milliseconds and the Y value in amps per meter. That's also possible. So you can, of course, set up different cursors, and you can set up this group of the group of cursors, cursor 1, for example, here for X and Y. So I can add also cursor 2 group for X and Y. So you can set up as many cursors as you want. And of course, I can also go here to the properties of the cursors, and I can say, okay, I just want to remove all cursors from my view. And now I want to show you the measurement feature of the scope view with one example. So I can go to measure. I can go to NFC measurements, and I can go to NFC waveform, and I can go to settings first of all, and I want to measure, let's say, the rise time, for example, between cursor 1 and cursor 2. And therefore, first of all, I have to change the limits to margin cursor 1 and 2. And then I'm activating here the rise time. And then I say OK. And now you can see here the measured rise time. And at the bottom, you can see here also the value of this measured rise time. In my example here, it's 195.28 nanoseconds. And if I go back to my previous view, so zoom out, and if I go here, in this area, it does switch then to the next position. And here I have also my rise time, and here we have a rise time of 195.649 nanoseconds. So it is possible, for example, by using this measurement feature to measure, let's say, in my example here, a specific rise time, fall time, or other timings according to the NFC forum standard. It is also possible, and that's a very nice feature, we can go to the quick measurement. And then I click on Verify Result. Let's go. And now here we have results. So we have a verification and analysis of, for example, timings like t=1, t=2, t=3, t=4, and so on, according to the NFC specification. And here you will get an indication. So NFC waveform is okay for my specific area here. And we have here different requirements which need to be fulfilled. And all these requirements are coming from the NFC forum specification, from the test specification. And we have implemented specific analyzers here, which are testing now or verifying now this signal with the requirements. And you will get here of course the values, and of course whether or not this, for example, values or requirements are okay or maybe failed. In my case here, in my example, it's passed. So very nice tool without, let's say, having any analyzers implemented here by yourself. These analyzers are coming with the analog scope view. And I think these analyzers and this feature is very helpful. Furthermore, I just want to remove these quick measurements. Furthermore, it is possible, let's go to this area once again. I want to measure the complete area here. Furthermore, it is possible with this measurement feature to go to rise fall time statistic. First of all, I need to go to the settings. And here, for example, I want to have a statistic regarding the rise time. I have to select here the rising edges. And yeah, let's go to OK. And now you can see here in my area, which I, let's say, selected with my cursor 1 and cursor 2. In this area, every rise time is measured. And you can see here in this area, for example, the mean rise time value, the overshots, undershots, maximum value, minimum value, all here you can see the mean values. And let's go to the, let's say, this position, and I can also show, let's say, for example here, the overshot, undershot, maximum value of this position, of this specific position here. If I go back, so I can see here. And if I go now to the next position of the rise time measurement, you can see it here as well. Let's go to the next position. It takes a little bit, and now we have the next value and so on. So that's also possible to have all these statistics. And a very nice feature, you can save these values. So for example, display rise fall times. I click on this. You have here the complete data list of all measured rise time values. This mean value, of course. Here we are measuring the rising edges, maximum value, minimum value, overshots, undershots, and peak to peak. You can copy paste this list. You can make a screenshot of the list. I think this is also a very, very nice feature of the analog scope. So let's go, for example, back. Go to remove. And now let's go, for example, here to the listener response. And I want to, for example, evaluate the frequency of the listener response. That's also possible, of course. Once again, I want to measure a specific area. I set up this specific area with cursor 1 and cursor 2. And then let's go to measure. And here we have the FFT measurements. First of all, I need to go to the settings. Okay, it's the measuring cursors 1 and 2 are set. You can say OK. And here now we have another view. We have the frequency spectrum of the envelope in this specific area. And if I go here now to this position, for example, you can see here the subcarrier frequency of 847 kilohertz. So here we can see the frequency spectrum of this specific area I selected. And that's also a very nice feature. Of course, you can also go to measure, FFT measurements, and then FFT frequency. And you will have the frequency also here at the bottom of the analog scope view of, in this case, 847.5 kilohertz. That's the subcarrier frequency. So these are, let's say, measurement examples of the analog scope view. And I want to show you, last but not least, let's say, the possibility to save these specific analog data to an Excel sheet. So I can click on Save, Export Data. And here you can choose what, let's say, kind of channels you want to export. For example, in our case, interesting is, of course, the envelope. then we can go to export, and then you can export this to a CSV file. And of course, you can also import such a CSV file. And of course, you can then open this CSV file with Excel. That's of course also possible. Okay. I would say, I hope you enjoyed, let's say, the presentation. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. And if you have, of course, questions, please do not hesitate to ask us these questions afterwards. And have a nice day. And thank you very much for attending. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So hello everybody, we are not ending this webinar right now because we want to give the summary and the Q&A session. You see that we have pre-recorded the session for you to give more focus on your questions, and I'd like to thank you for your questions. But before we dive into details, I'd like to give you a short summary of what we have seen, the protocol data part and in the analog data part. So in the protocol data part, for instance, we have the feature filter and search. So what's it in it for you? This feature really helps you to orientate yourself in a larger recording, in a larger capture. Usually with NFC, you get quite a lot of data, and it's important to hop to those parts of the sessions which are relevant or important or where the error occurs. And then with the synchronized use, you have the physical, the protocol, the info, and the summary view. This helps you to jump also to a point of interest, but to have the details you need. Maybe you search for a command, then you go to the protocol view, it jumps to the other parts in the physical and summary, or you in the suite of order of commands, you have some specific section which you are interested in, and this helps you to jump there using the summary view, but then you get the details in the protocol view. So speed up and master what you have recorded. And then the create, position, and lock, the creation, the positioning, and the locking of note marks helps you to revisit a session already analyzed, or to discuss it with someone else. So if you say, I have some findings, what do you think of that? Then it's very helpful. And also speeds up to go into what is interesting for you, not to search for what you have been thinking of is important. And then the timing measurements, it's always important, timing in life, but also in contactless specifically. And you can manually decide where you want to put them, and it's just 2 clicks, and it's an exact timing. The trace case is, we have scaling in trace case depending on the antenna used. Right. And if you use the trace software with the interoperability test center or device test center monitoring modules, then you have a calibrated device. So it's exact what you have here. Yeah. And then for the analog data analysis, this might feel a bit less important depending on the point of view. I think it's a visualization tool. It's important to zoom in and out. So human brain is very capable of scanning patterns and shapes. You can set cursors. It's again the timings, but here on another detail level. This speeds up analysis, and it also gives you a quick way to watertight evidence. We also had customers who said, in the spot of my customer, I sit there and they confront me with some crappy components, let's put it like this, and then they say to me, they claim that my solution is not compliant. So you get quick evidence, which is watertight. And then the measurement, you can remeasure NFC form characteristics, waveform characteristics. It's also a facilitation of quality assurance. And then you have the statistics, which is very helpful to see about the stability of the signal. Also the frequency helps you to see, is there a stability in the signal behavior, or is there any disturbance maybe, which is impeding your communication, your transaction. Okay, so this is the wrap up a bit of the features and what you get out of such an analysis. So I try to emphasize that what you have seen here with the example of trace case is the same if you use interoperability test center or if you use the monitoring modules from device test center. But we have used the trace case as prominent example. You just have the different hardware capabilities of the tools used when you use interop or device test center. Okay, then I think I have a very important question for you, Andreas Schreckenberg. Very typical, I guess. How long can a trace be which I take with the trace case?
Yeah, that's depend on the settings that you choose in the app. You can choose that you capture with every oscillation. So 1 through FC would then be the choice, and then you can capture 650 milliseconds. So in the first step, that sounds a little bit less, but it's totally sufficient to judge on the waveforms and do exactly what Andreas Weine has presented here in the webinar, and you get a verification of your analog settings. So it's totally sufficient. If you then choose every second oscillation, you would grab then 1.5 seconds, and the fourth oscillation, which could not still make sense, but lesser samples would probably make no sense if you are interested in a good resolution for the analog scope. I hope this helps.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, then we have another question, which is, I think, also very important. There, in the recording, you could see there were sequences, or in the summary view, also sequences marked in orange. And I think that's a good question for you, Andreas.
Yeah, okay. So sometimes you can see this let's say, unknown frames because the translator is missing some bytes. So we can't translate the complete, let's say, frame to an APDU. And most of the cases we are receiving logs from customers to analyze them. Then we can see that the, let's say, positioning of the antenna is a very important factor, especially the positioning between the antenna and the PICC. Yes, because of the modulation, because of the load modulation, we have to, let's say, see, of course, every load modulation, exact load modulation. And in case we are missing, for example, a PICC response, then, of course, we have an incomplete APDUs, and then we make this incomplete APDUs visible as an unknown APDU.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good hint. And what would you do then? What's one possibility to go deeper?
One possibility, okay, to first of all, to change a little bit the position of the antenna, and also to have a look to the, let's say, to the field characteristic, which is also possible by the trace case. The field strength, for example, can be visualized in the trace case, and therefore I have, let's say, a possibility, let's say, to find a correct or very good position between, let's say, the PCD, for example, mobile, and the PICC.
Okay, so yeah, the app helps you to position best as possible. Yeah, okay, using the field strength indication. Okay, then this leads us to another question, and this is, will there be a webinar on the trace case app? I think I'll ask you, Andreas Schreckenberg, as product manager, and myself maybe as marketing manager.
Yeah, of course, we think that the app is quite easy to use, but I think it would be a good point in the, let's say, next quarter to launch here also a how-to or a webinar for the app. I think we have to dramatically improve the things here. Also the firmware and the stuff behind that in the last release. So yeah, let's see in the next quarter. Maybe hopefully, we can do it.
Okay. I'll talk to you. Okay, and then there's another question, which I guess is good for Michael, please. This is about the analog scope view. We have seen that we work with the envelope data. Is that enough, Michael?
Yes, it's enough, because the envelope reveals all the hidden modulation, which you can't see in the oscillation signal. And so we need the envelope to identify the parts.
Okay, then, yeah, and then NFC forum measurements, that means if you do analog testing, is this performed on the envelope or the AD data?
It's always on the envelope data. Only in if the measurement is frequency measurement is done with on the frequency, then you need the oscillation signal, the AD data. But it's only in the only very little bit measurements needed. Most needs the envelope data.
Vast majority of measurements for compliance is done on the envelope. Yeah, thank you. That's a good hint, I think. I have another tricky question. I hope also Michael and Andreas can maybe have a look into it. We have seen in the analog part, you can position cursors. How important is it, or how important is it where to position the cursors? So other way maybe is to say, is it can I position it anywhere and do I get results, or does it depend on where I put the cursors to measure?
Yeah, first of all, of course, you have to know what you want to analyze. Yes, if you have a specific problem, for example, the unknown command, for example, then I want to search for this problem also by using the analog scope log or the analog scope. I have to, let's say, trigger to a certain position then, yes, and therefore I have to first of all use the app to configure my trigger point, and then I have to run this trace, this monitoring again, and then hopefully we will get exact this position where we can see, okay, there is our problem, yes, for example, distortion of the signal, and yeah, so important is to set the trigger point at the correct point in the communication. Of course, maybe you need more trials to find the correct trigger position, but you can, for example, trigger to the subcarrier modulation to carrier on. You can trigger, for example, also manual from an external signal, and that's also possible. So in this case, yeah, the trigger position, of course, is very important. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Okay, and then I have another question. Is the trace case viewer officially available like Comprion Movie? Maybe that's good for you, Andreas Schenberg, the product manager.
Yeah, it is. So here the things are different. So there's no license protection and there is no SMC or something like that. Yeah. So we need to onboard you to get access to our web portal. But you can let's say share the trace case viewer with your business partner and use it as a viewer. That's of course the intention. The same with the app. So everybody can go into the app stores, iOS and Android, and can download the app and can share the traces with his colleagues via WhatsApp, I don't know, via email, what you like. Yeah. And that's also the big strength that we have here, a field tracer that you can then share your logs with your specialists in your departments, your engineers. Yeah? So an unskilled person can take a trace and can send it to the experts in the lab.
Yeah, that's a good end. Yeah, this way of using it. Take a trace, send it to me. I'm the expert. I'll sort this out.
Yeah.
Okay. Then this leads me to another question, which is a bit about what is the outlook, Andreas, as product manager? What's next in terms of maybe trace case product, but also in terms of NFC and NFC forum?
Okay, so we will step by step we will improve the trace case, the app, and the viewer with protocols. That is the reason why we had the poll. So just also get some feedback on you. So in the release that we have launched this week, we support we upgrade the Felica translator for the Asian market. We also improved the documentation with PDF, And finally, last but not least, we integrate a first version of the digital key translator for the car connectivity consortium. So you get the, let's say, APDUs in human readable format. So I think this is quite useful. In the next quarter, we will follow the NFC forum roadmap and look into the wireless charging probably.
Okay, good. And yeah, that's with the translation. Then we all first look this year. We still look into the certification release 13 for
Right.
automotive. Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it with questions we have here. And I'd like to thank the participants for the patience to invest the time. Thank you very much, and also to answer the polls. There's a very small survey at the end. Would be very happy if you can answer it. It's just clicking a pre-set answer. It's very simple, very fast. Thank you for investing another few seconds, and we will send the recording to you. We will send links to the files shared with you. But I'd also like to highlight that we are here for you, and that we are happy to get your questions and your proposals or suggestions for improving. So support at Comprion, Ms. Head of the Press here. Thanks. If you turn to us and share your questions, please ask, don't be shy. And I'd like to thank my dear colleagues for this teamwork, which makes the dream work. I'm really happy to be with you here. It's very helpful to do this together as a team. Okay, then thank you, everyone. I'd say goodbye and hope to see you in the next webinar. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.